Bible records that Joseph received from his father, Jacob, a special tunica. This is even one of the best-known biblical stories. After all, those who do not remember the history of the rejected young man betrayed within his own family, who experienced a radical change in his life, passing from a prisoner in Egypt after being sold by his brothers. The governor of that land, who was son of the most powerful nations in the world at the time, Joseph's tunic, who on the one hand indicated his favoritism and prominence compared to his brothers, also ended up at the center of his greatest pain. The tunic that was a gift from his father, at the same time, was also identified as an offense by his brothers. And this tunic was popularly known by Bible readers as a colorful and adorned tunica. Some people even seek to know what were the colors of Joseph's tunic. But what if I tell you that this is not what the Bible really says? Interestingly, the biblical text original in Hebrew from the book of Genesis does not say exactly that Joseph's tunic was all colorful. Moreover, in the outcome of Joseph's history, we can see a contrast between what happened to his special tunic in the middle of his own family and what happened to Joseph in the midst of strangers in Egypt. And if you want to better understand all this and find out what Joseph's tunic was really like and what meaning she carried, watch this video until the end. To understand the meaning of Joseph's tunic, it is important to know everything that involved that gift given by Jacob. According to the biblical account, at that time Joseph was a 17-year-old girl who, apart from her father's flocks with his brothers, especially those half-Simon who were children of Bilhah and Zilpah, concubines of Jacob. However, the biblical writer describes that Joseph had the habit of keeping his father informed about his brother's wrong conduct, as we read in Genesis chapter 37, between verses 1 and 2. And then, in verse 3 of chapter 37 of Genesis, the biblical writer also makes it clear that Joseph was Jacob's favorite son, because he was the son of his old age. And here it is worth remembering that Joseph was Rachel's son, Jacob's beloved wife, and was Jacob's last son born in Padan, as his brother Benjamin was born in Canaan. On the other hand, Joseph's brothers realized that Jacob loved him more than all other children, and so they hated him to the point that they could not even talk to him peacefully. The mood between the brothers was so tense that they could not even greet Joseph with peace or talk amicably with him. In addition, Jose also had dreams that foreshadowed his exalted position within Jacob's family, and this made his brothers hate him even more. And it was in this context of family rivalry that Joseph won his father a special tunic. In the imagination of most Bible readers, Joseph's tunic was a decorated and colorful garment. However, as we said at the beginning of the video, this image of Jose's tunic may not be exactly the right one. This is because the biblical text simply says that Jacob made Joseph a long-sleeved, taller tunica. And the point is that the way the Hebrew text presents itself at this point makes uncertain nature of that tunic of Joseph. In the description of the tunic, the biblical text brings a Hebrew term that refers to the sole of the foot and also the palm of the hand. So, when applied to refer to a garment, this term basically indicated a length tunic that went to the feet and with sleeves that went to their hand. That is, the biblical text speaks of a long tunic. But maybe now you are wondering, where did the popular idea that Joseph's tunic were colorful came from? No doubt this idea comes from some biblical translations in Portuguese that replicated in this text the position of versions of Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible that corresponds to the Old Testament of the Christian Bible. As the word originally used in the text is interpreted, it can mean a single thing that is fulfilled or a variety of things. For example, in the case of a tunic, this same word can mean a long or less tunic, probably a tunic with a variety of details, such as colors and ornaments. The translators, when translated Hebrew into Greek in Septuagint, they preferably gave the idea of a colorful tunic, and this position was followed by some versions of the Bible in Portuguese. However, in the Hebrew text, the most likely idea is that Joseph's tunic was a long tunic to his feet, to his heels and sleeves that went to their hands. So, the curiosity of some people about what were the colors of Jose's tunic is not much sense. The biblical text, in fact, seems to talk much more about the size from the tunic than about the colors of Joseph's tunic. But whatever, regardless of whether Joseph's tunic was a colorful tunic or simply a long tunic, in fact, that was a special garment. This tunic not only meant that Joseph was Jacob's son, but also that his father intended to put him as his main heir and leader of his clan. Joseph's tunic distinguished him from his brothers, and was a testimony of his prominence among the children of Israel. Even the only other biblical passage that applies the same expression used to describe Joseph's tunic speaks of the garments worn by Israeli royalty in Samuel's second book, chapter 13 and verse 18. And we know Jacob loved and trusted Joseph more than in his other brothers and intended to give him the blessing of the firstborn. Of course, Joseph was far from being the firstborn son. In fact, he was the second youngest. But his older brothers had acted reprehensible. On the other hand, Joseph was someone who feared the Lord since his childhood. As recorded in the biblical text, he did not condone the wrong conduct of his brothers, and was willing to report them, even if this could bring him consequences, such as the hatred of his brothers. But, as we know, Joseph was betrayed by his older brothers, and sold as a slave to an Ishmaelite caravan. And Joseph's tunic, who had been a gift from his father, later returned to Jacob stained with blood as a false proof that the boy had been devoured by a field beast. However, time has passed, and in God's sovereignty, the evil practiced against Joseph by his brothers was made well, so that the whole family of the covenant was saved and blessed through him during the period of hunger that plagued the earth. Yes, Joseph's special tunic was taken from him inside his own home by his own brothers. But in a distant land among a strange people, by the power of God, Joseph he put on the governor's robes of the most important nation of that time. And later, when Joseph again was gathered with his family, he finally received from his father the double portion of the heritage that fit his firstborn son as his former tunic symbolized, so that his 2 children were counted among the tribes of Israel. Joseph's special tunic was taken from him, spotted with blood, and probably lost. But at no time have they been able to take Joseph's special favor of the Lord, nor stain his conduct or disappear with his inheritance. Now write in the comments if you already knew this curiosity about Joseph's tunic. I also want to invite you to study theology with us totally online and deepen the knowledge of God's Word. We have open enrollment and you can study anywhere. The information is in the first comment.
Getting to the end of a video like this is truly rare. In a rushed world, you paused, listened, and reflected, and that puts you among the few who are truly present. If this meant something to you, tell us your city in the comments, subscribe if you'd like, and share it with someone who's also looking for more than just distraction. Thanks, a big hug, and see you soon.